Hello again. The last time we met, if you remember, I had asked Ian here if he would do 3 pieces of homework. One was to look at his own teaching so that he could isolate those things which drive his teaching, that he never leaves at home. They're to do with his standards, with his feelings about things, with what matters, no matter what you're learning about or teaching about, this matters. So that's the first thing, because that gives him his style of teaching, his obsessions in teaching, and people say, oh, well, he's like that. The second thing I asked him to look at was what kinds of paradigms were operating in school which gave the children their expectations of how to behave in school, how to behave with teachers. So the first thing, I'm going to ask him these 2 first, and then we'll get on from there. So what did you find out about your drives?
Well, I found it very difficult to do, first of all, Dorothy. The first time I tried to do it, I struggled to produce 1 or 2, and as I gave some more thought and more time to it, I did find them starting to flow, but I'm not very happy about some of the ways I've presented them.
Well, let's have a look at some.
If you'd like to have a look at what I've...
Tell me the one I should look at that you think is one of the very dominating ones.
Well, I think the first 2 are very strong for me.
Respect for other people's territory and recognition of the boundary. Yes. Now, I would say what you've done is you've written down a kind of abstraction. Now, if I were trying to, this is a bit difficult for me, I've got to translate this into acting, not acting as in acting, not like theatre acting. How does this affect the way I behave with people? So I would put it something like, I'd better know what you need in the space we've got between us.
Yes.
So I would tend to put it that way.
Yes.
Because you seem to be saying other people matter. So I'd better know what space you need.
Yes.
I realise you need space.
Yes.
Right?
That's what's behind that.
Yes. It means, I think, in your teaching, you'd probably frequently draw people's attention to when they're crossing boundaries.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
And that might affect how you might have a strong sense in the dramas you build about how people offend or are helped by the way they use space around one another.
Yes.
And you said this second one.
I think the second one's important.
The sense of history.
We are both part of what has come before and part of what is yet to come.
This time breeds the future and is grown from the past.
Yes.
Now, I'd put that as active. I'm remembering everything I'm doing is breeding its own future.
Yes.
And where we're at now came from yesterday's breeding of future, yes. Now, I share that one very much. I don't know how many people do share this one, this sense of now is the action time, the praxis, but what is to come is born of here. The presaging is done here, right. Now, what I'll do is I'll go through these carefully. Is there any other one?
Well, there are ones that, I mean, I suppose they're all important to me, but there are, this one I think.
Yes, now I've noticed you've got that twice in a strange way, though they're
Yes,
different. Life experiences hurt as well as help people, and there's no gain without pain. You know, it's the Prime Minister keeps saying this, I believe, at the minute. If I put those 2 together, in praxis of your classroom, I'd expect you to not be afraid to get children struggling a bit.
That's right.
But I'd also expect you to be offering them the future possibility of the struggle.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, that will affect your drama greatly because, you see, you probably stretch children, which, of course, can be painful if they're not ready for it. And if you judge it badly, you know, you can hurt them. So in a way, you've put that negatively. Life experiences hurt as well as help, and there's no gain without pain. You've put really the negative
Negatives.
first. Struggling is worth it, so I support you, would be maybe how I would say that. I can only suggest to you, you keep these by you, and every so often as you're teaching, you'll say, there's an example of that drive, and this is how I'll put it now.
Right.
You see, I told you last time, I could not find a way to express my very wide interest in art and engineering and, fabrics and sculpture until I realised, and faces, children walking in were always sculptures. Then I realised, well, it's just form. It's as simple as that, obsession with form, you see. Now, I was probably 15 years trying to get rid of saying, I like art, I like sculpture, you know, I look at fabrics, and so on. Right, well, you've started on this one, and it's going to go on a long time. Did you notice any negative aspects that you could say, now I'm aware of that because I've written this down?
Oh yes, I think some of them.
Can you give an example?
Yes, I mean this one here. Whenever I don't know how best to say this, but whenever I ask a question, I'm meeting my needs.
Yes,
It's a realisation that why am I asking questions?
Yes. Now that superbly ties up what I've said about drives. That the questions you ask children, no matter what form they're in, because good questions are often in the form of statements. I've never understood why God made sand is in the form of a statement,
Right.
with an up at the end of it, as you might say. Now, you see, you can only breed your questions out of meeting your drives.
Right.
Yes. So we're always limited in that sense. Yes, right. Okay, there's your drives. But what did you find out about the paradigms that were operating in your classroom?
Thought that was difficult enough.
Yes, I know.
Well, I think in my classroom I probably would be aspiring to the crucible paradigm.
The one where you're stirring the knowledge of the children,
Yes.
and in adding to it, you want it to be joined on.
And the changing all the time.
Yes.
So the struggle, the notion of children struggling to learn and understand.
Yes.
But I realised when I came to examine the paradigms that existed in the school that that wasn't quite so easy to get a feel for. I think I can best describe it by telling you what I see, and you might be able to interpret it for me.
Yes.
The school, I think, has a paradigm that it aspires to, which is a very child-centred approach, which would see children as the focal point of what the school does, and the literature and everything that you'd read would tell you that the school is there to look after the individual child and care for the child.
Now, what Ian's done here, you see, he's got two kinds of paradigms, and they both are probably operating. One is the paradigm of the image that the school wants to put out and probably believes in it. So in its documentation to parents and so on, it will genuinely believe that's what it wants to do. So it's wanting to achieve a nurturing and of children and a caring about.
Yes, I think all of that is
Yes.
there.
But you don't think that's actually operating in the praxis?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I think what I see happening is when I hear what children have to say about what they see, that it seems to be more of the vessel.
The vessel.
I think so. There's knowledge here that has to be learnt, and we are going to fill you up with it.
Yes. Now, you see here, it may seem to have very little relevance to drama, But in fact, it is terribly important. If Ian's going to try to make drama work for learning, it isn't what the school thinks it's operating, it's how the child feels it's being operated on. So the staff may feel that they are nurturing, but if the children feel they're being filled up at a fairly high rate, even though you want to operate at the crucible level in your classroom, if the children who come to you feel you're filling them up, that's the behaviour they will tend to demonstrate. Now, when you start to work in drama, you are inviting people to take power and authority over decisions with you, not against you and not in spite of you, but you want to work as a laboratory where the children and you together make knowledge. If they are waiting to be filled up, then, you know, that's where you're going to have to begin, to gradually move that.
Right.
Because you might have got them, you sort of 5 months in since term began, since the year began, you might have got them to a bit of movement because of your own aspirations to stir knowledge. But it's terribly confusing for children to be suddenly asked to turn their knowledge round when they've been asked to absorb it before. So they're going to be, you know, pretty well confused.
Yes. Yes.
So that we've got to consider this realistically when we start your drama, so that you don't feel you failed if it goes haywire at the beginning.
That's my biggest worry,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Now, in the main, would you say that their behaviour, the actual behaviour that they give themselves permission to use in your classroom, has a certain fluidity and ability to take decisions? I mean, do they get up and go and talk to somebody and so on in
Yes,
your room?
yes,
They're
they do.
comfortable with that?
They would move around
Yes.
and make some
Yes.
basic
Yes.
decisions.
And do they feel they can argue with you? I mean, have you got that far yet?
I think we're getting...
Yes. Not argue
Getting-
against you, but argue
no,
with you.
They would
Yeah.
argue a point, yes.
Yes.
If,
Well, that's great. That's
uh,
nice. Yes.
it's still early days, I
Yes,
think.
yes, yes.
You know,
And of course they are 9, aren't they? 9 and 10.
some are better at it than others.
Of course, yes. Right, now let's have a look at your classroom.
Yes,
Well,
well, the classroom is almost a square, as you can see, with a quiet room at the side.
Now, I asked Ian to look at his classroom because if he wants to use drama, he's going to have to disturb it to a certain extent. And I'm not here talking about moving all the desks back, but I'm talking about rearranging it for significance. So if the children are used to moving their desks and chairs and tables, he doesn't need a lot of space for drama. What he does need is significant space. So you don't have to go in the hall and take all your clothes off and change into special uniforms, but you've got to be able to generate space in the mind and move your furniture to helpfully give you a sense of where you are, you see. So it's under this term sign I asked Ian to look at his classroom. Do you feel that they feel they are together in the classroom? That this is a way of feeling we could talk to one another across and get ideas across, sitting as they do?
Yes, I think that, as you can see, there are 4 groups of desks there, and I think that they work very much within those groupings in the classroom, but there is communication across.
Yeah, and can they go into here without
That's-
permission, or do you tend to make it special when we go
We
into
tend
here?
to have a task when they go in.
Right,
They'll have
yes.
something to do,
Yes,
and they'll need that
yes.
space.
How much display space have you got?
Well, I put there are display boards here and here, and
Yes.
there and here.
And are they within the reach of children?
Yes,
Yes.
they are. This one,
Yes.
there's some trays underneath it,
Yes.
so it's a bit more
Yes,
awkward,
bit
but they are
difficult.
within
Yes,
reach
yes,
otherwise.
yes. And you've got a blackboard, have you?
That's there.
Oh, yes, and it's quite a big one fixed to the
Yes,
wall.
yes.
Right, okay. Now, we have to think about this when we think about the work you actually, you know, that you actually want to engage on. So, what curriculum areas do you want your drama to be about, or to help?
Yeah, I've I suppose I've taken a bigger risk than I should, but I've wanted to focus on science. And
Right.
I felt that there are 2 or 3 things within the curriculum that we are going to need to cover.
Right.
And I felt, well, it may be possible to use them, but also to draw in other areas of the curriculum within it.
Yes.
So I've selected a couple of things from the curriculum itself,
Right.
and like to give you those, and then maybe talk about something a little bit broader than that, if possible.
All right.
Well, I think I'd like one of the things to know, for them to know that air is all around them.
Air.
Air,
Air is all around us.
yes.
Right.
These are all to do with atmosphere and weather.
Yes.
These,
So you don't just want them to know, you want them to realise this knowledge.
That's the problem.
The air is all round.
Yes.
And you don't think you can do it by telling them.
No, I think it's a very difficult thing.
Yes,
because
it is
it's
quite
quite
hard.
tangible.
Yes, the thing is unseen, solid. Yes,
So I
right,
wanted to come
okay.
to a realisation of that.
Air is all round.
There's one here that I think which is more tangible, be able to measure temperature, rainfall,
So the acts of measuring,
the act of measuring is something important.
temperature and rainfall are just 2 examples, are they?
And one that's with that, to be able to explain that wind is air in motion.
Yes,
You know, that
Yes,
sort of idea. that,
yes. Yes, right. Now, I think we've to make a distinction about drama now. A lot of this sort of curriculum material looks very antiseptic, that things are clear-cut. And a lot of teaching is antiseptic. I clear everything away except the Great Lakes of Canada, you know, and we're going to deal with the Great Lakes, and we don't need to bother about anything else. But when you come into drama work, and particularly when you start using sign in your classroom, in a way you're deliberately muddying the waters, because you know very well that nothing is separated out in the world. Everything starts to get muddled and muddied with everything else. If it bothers you that things get septic,
Yes.
then you'd be better just doing straight transmission teaching. Now that's one distinction. It's gonna look septic, not antiseptic. Things are gonna get muddled before they get clear.
Right.
And some people don't have a toleration of muddle because they think, well, they'll never sort this out. We're in such a muddle. I asked some children, you know, I don't know what almoners do in monasteries. And for a while they thought they probably grew almonds. Now, some teachers can't tolerate this, thinking through, yeah, well, it does look as if they might grow almonds. I don't know if almonds grow in England, and so on and so on. So that's what you're heading for a while. Right. The second thing is, drama will not offer you direct, informative learning bits, as you might say, that you can write neatly in books. It isn't built to do that. What it does is explore ideas, throw them around within a context. It's the context drama gives you. Now, the normal context of school is sit down and get yourself interested in this, you student.
Right.
And I know that's why I'm here a bit more. I may not know it all, but I do know a bit more. So stay as a student, mate, and I'll help you. Now, drama doesn't work that way. Drama says, let's decide to be somebody else. So, you see, you might turn out to be having to be Galileo.
Oh, right.
Or the children might be helping Galileo. You decide by your will to choose to be somebody else. You're not really anybody else. You're saying, I'll behave as if I'm somebody else, and I'll put blinkers on that help me study like they would have done. Now, this looks like being a little bit ridiculous, because you say, well, they'd learn a lot better about moving air if they didn't have to bother with being Galileo. But in fact, what it actually does is it gets people off guard, and it starts people not feeling, I don't know a lot, and it starts people saying, well, we better find something out about this, because to do that means a bit of confusion in the beginning. And a lot of teachers don't like confusion, especially if visitors walk into their classroom. If people are getting very confused, it worries us, because we think, well, there shouldn't be any confusion. Great Lakes today, crops tomorrow. There'll be no confusion. So drama deliberately seems to sort of muddy this sort of thing. Now then, let's have a look at this. You have a look at it there, and I'll talk to the people here. When you start your work, no matter what work you're doing, your children already know something. The problem is, dare you spend time on finding out what they know? And there's a great fear about in teaching as to whether, in fact, I dare spend 3 weeks at the beginning of a year discovering what they know in science, what they know in geography, what they know in English, how they talk to one another. In fact, it can save a lot of time later on, but it doesn't have to take courage to do it that way. However, you like the notion of stirring their knowledge.
Yes.
So that's what they already bring. Now, one of the other things is they will have an expectation, if they're a student, as they usually are, that you will control the communication, right? But they also have their expectation of what they're supposed to do around here according to the way you behave. There's your paradigms again. Now this, then, is the total communication system in the classroom. They bring what they know. You can have a control because, in a way, that's what's expected of you. And finally, they expect things of you because of how they see their job in the classroom. Now, this is open to some shift. You can control that at variable strength. You can dominate it, or you can be laid back over it and leave it to them. You've got all these choices. Down here, if you bring about a change, this one, their expectation of what they're supposed to do to learn, they will change their strategies for learning, because you'll change how the communication system works and the social context. In drama, you shift the social context. You say, let's assume that you are these people and I'm this sort of person, or we are these kinds of people dealing with this kind of problem. So you suddenly stop being the one in control of the communication, and you've made them have to shift their view of you. Good heavens, he's talking like Galileo, you know. And this means that you change the strategies that they can use to learn, and you therefore shift and broaden the kinds of learning possible. This is not my chart. This is Douglas Barnes's chart. So this seems to me perfectly suitable for what we want, because this is where you're shifting it. You're shifting the communication system. Okay. Right. And you see, once you start to do that, this is when you will stop being very antiseptic.
Yes.
And you start, in fact, trying to get children emotionally involved. And I don't mean being emotional here. I mean caring about it. Suddenly, I've got something to care about, you see, rather than, oh, well, Sir says, so I'll write it down, or I'll listen, or I'll look like I'm listening, and so on. And I'm not denigrating straight transmission teaching. There are times when I need it. Quite quickly, you know, if you want to know the way from here to the Haymarket, you don't want to be going through all that rigmarole, you just want to be told straight transmission teaching. Now then, the kinds of drama you set up, you have a big range of kinds of drama. For example, you could regard it as being a certain amount of concepts about science could literally be taught to certain students if you did the text of Galileo, that if you took Brecht's Galileo and with some high school students, you'd be working from a text, and certain aspects of Galileo and concepts about the life he lived might be very important to some understanding of just how science does move forward. So text is a way you can use. Now, I'm not suggesting you want to do that with 9-year-olds, but you might. You also can use a kind, which of course some teachers use all the time, where people call it improvisation. We'll put ourselves into some active exploration of some sort of event that hasn't actually happened, it's fictional, but we're making it happen to us. And a lot of teachers, when they think of work with younger children, like you've got, your 9s, 10s, they think of, oh, we'll do an improvisation. Now, in fact, what you're really trying to do, if you use this system, is you're saying, let's shape it as we go. Let's see what we think is likely to happen next. But you're running it so that it happens to them. They're making it happen to themselves by the way you and them set it up. Here, they're interpreting something. And that makes it happen to them. But here, they are inventing it. Now, simulation is when you actually try to, you take an event that's happened and you try to make it like it was. You simulate it, and there are loads of very modern simulations used in high schools, which you can actually buy. Simulations. I mean, I've seen the Torrey Canyon disaster done, you know, as a simulation where people took different roles in the situation. Then you've got dance and mime. And some teachers would find, dealing with your science project, if they've got that kind of imagination, that to dance the energy of the wind, to make tangible in movement the flow of air, some teachers would find that a fairly natural way to try and approach this. It wouldn't look scientific, it'll look right mucky and muddy and, you know, but it can be so. Now, in games, and this can help some classes that have difficult social health, in games, you reduce it all to rules. So you see, you could do a game of the air, the wind, and the way they act in space. And the game element is we play the rules as far as we can. Now, an element of games could also be where scientists are in opposition to each other. That I'll try and find out what you know, and you try and find out what I know. And it's a game, because there's that element of one of us will win, you see.
Right, yeah.
And then we have this where you take a story, and it can be some facts about wind or space or whatever it might be, and you actually demonstrate the way air moves. Now, you see, I don't know one because I've only just heard about it from you, but there may well be a very, very good scientific explanation which you could actually make your text. You see, I've used the Georgics of Virgil with 7-year-old children on growing vines because we were running a Roman vineyard. Now, I was dealing with climate and the way photosynthesis works. So with the 7-year-olds, because we were Romans, you see, we've moved our social context. We are Romans. We have to look after this vineyard whilst our general is away at the wars, fighting with Caesar. The Georgics of Virgil give us the strict instructions of the time, and I don't read Latin, I mean, I had to do it in translation. Virgil knew about vines according to the period he dwelt in. So we were using the text of Virgil's Georgics to teach us. It was our textbook, you know, our gardener's textbook. Right. And therefore, you see, when we demonstrate it to the general when he came back, this is what we've done with your vines. We actually used the text of Virgil and showed him. And so we demonstrated this. And of course, we showed him photosynthesis. These vines have had no light And we've discovered, you know, that they need so many. The reason the grapes cannot swell is because this and this and this. So we could actually stick straight Virgil to actually use as the basis of our drama. And then this one, and I think this one might help you best, in fact, but that's just my particular foible, where you don't say, pin your ears back, I'll teach you something. You say, you and me are going to run this together. So you might run a weather station. Now, if you're running a weather station, you are not improvising round an incident. Neither are you simulating. What you are saying is, we're in charge around here, we run this, and if you want to know about wind, hang on, we've got the information because we are tracking the winds of the earth all the time. Now, if you want to do that, you can't talk as if you're the boss and they're the students. You are colleagues in a laboratory running a weather station. Now, some teachers are happy with one, some are happy with another. You, poor soul, don't know what you're happy with yet, so we'll just have to ferret it out. But I saw you already dismissing some. You know, I could see you saying, well, I don't think I want to be bothered with that yet, or that yet. Are there any I can cross out?
Well, I think dance and mime is beyond.
It'd be interesting to see if he crosses out what you would cross out. You think dance and mime are a bit beyond you yet? Okay, now that's to do with, really, you see, how your imagination sees what we could call the product. What will the children be doing if they're dealing with this? And that seems to be something that doesn't yet appeal. Okay, we'll just put a little fine line through it, because that's Ian's choice. There's no point in doing that till you can begin to see it. See, one of my problems is I can actually see all these in action, and I feel I could do them. I may be arrogant, but I feel I can tackle them, because my imagination works without fear at this stage.
Yes.
Now, are there any others?
I think I could perhaps work on the others. I'm less attracted to the games one, I think.
Well, we'll just put a little line through that, because I want to help you plan what you feel you can tackle.
I'm very interested in the literary text idea, but
this one?
Well,
or this?
I'm thinking
this
about
one.
that one, but
okay.
it's one that I could see might well be beyond me as well. So
yes.
it's a big question.
Yes,
with
yes,
that one.
right. Yes, yes, yes.
I think I very much like the idea of the mantle of the expert, but again, I don't have much experience of doing that.
No, no. Well, join the clan. You know, there's not many with it. This goes with your crucible sense.
Yes.
The fact that you want to stir knowledge.
Yes.
This one would very much go with that.
That's what attracts me.
It helps children walk very tall. Because they suddenly have responsibility for outcomes in a way that the student position never gives them, because ultimately in the student position they know the teacher will be responsible for the outcomes and locking the door and putting the things by. You know, in the long run it isn't their responsibility.
No.
But it begins to be so in this one. Okay, right. So I have to bear that in mind when we try to deal with these concepts. Now then, we come on to something else, which, if you look at Barnes's chart, the pupil's use of strategies for learning and the kinds of learning possible. Now, when you're in a drama, there are about 9 positions from which the children will view the event. And this helps you tremendously feel your way through. You don't get muddled up so much with it. Now, I've got it here, and let's see if I can, if you pick your copy up. Teachers who do what I'd call, let's dramatise what happens. They try to set up the situation so the children behave as if they were there. And this is often where teachers run into trouble, because this is where the group's social health And the feeling the children have they can do anything they like suddenly now tends to go against what the teacher's trying to do. So if you want to live in the Stone Age and be in the event, all kinds of tricky situations arise, and that's when they start going, "Ooh," and all this kind of thing that teachers are worried about.
Yes.
Right. However, if you want to get very close to the Stone Age, you see, that feels as if it's the closest. But if you want to get really close to the Stone Age, you might find people who are telling of a hunt because somebody is questioning them. So you see, we may be living in the Stone Age, but I, as their chief, if you feel you want to enter the drama, and of course I always do, because I'm a good model for seriousness, which is not gloomy. You've got to make a distinction. Seriousness is not gloom. So you see, I might be their chief asking why there is no buffalo here for the cooking or the sacrifice. They can show me why not. Where were you? Where was the buffalo? Show me how the hunt was. Now, when they do that, they are generating the images in the event, but they're filtering it through the superior who is asking, or the hungry one who is asking. You don't have to be the boss, you know. But you see, the kind of knowledge they get, if you think back here, is quite different. The chief can say, "Are you telling me that all the animals are diseased? All of them were sick? Yeah, show me the manner of their being sick." Well, they'll begin, you see, to show you how it was. Now, you've a certain control because you are saying, "Show me." You are asking for a demonstration. But they are the guides. You have not the knowledge. They have the knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yes, I see.
Show me how you tipped your arrows. Why was there no poison? Show me how the poison came to be forgotten. And so on and so on. Now, all these then are different. If you are the agent, you are the one with the authority to demand that all this knowledge be made plain. So if I'm the agent, I may be the medicine man. For the moment I'm mixing Red Indians and Stone Age, but never mind. The medicine man who must see that this knowledge is given to the people. And I will defend you because I can interpret this knowledge. You see what I mean? Now, all these are different ways of getting the knowledge. If people know they have to go to a recorder who will write it in the sand so that something more is done with it, or that this message will be sent to the king, getting it clear in a certain kind of order, having to define your motives and so on may come into it. It sounds very boring because people think, "Oh no, it's much nicer to be living in the Stone Age." It isn't, because they will be in the Stone Age much more in these. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
Now, when we looked after our vines, Virgil was our guide. We then worked in the vineyard as a participant in the event. But it was the general returning who was the examiner and helping them know their knowledge. You see? Now, a lot of people think in drama, because they're used to TV, they're used to going to the theatre perhaps and the cinema, and the children have this expectation, if they've seen something on television and they want to do the Turtles or whatever it might be this year, they think they can all be different and do it the way they want it. But in fact, you see, when you make a drama, if you all can have something of the same understanding, the same need in it, you move much more quickly towards the centre of it than if I'm busy doing my thing and you're busy doing your thing. We never really get it together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's why we don't ask for characterization from children. We ask for attitude. The attitude to the buffalo is what will eventually breed the Stone Age. The attitude to the medicine man will breed the red man in his time of an earlier time, or today. You see, does that make a little bit of sense?
Yes, I can see.
It's not very popular, but you see, you frame your language quite differently. If I had some Roman soldiers just last week who were wounded in a brawl about a Samaritan that had come to the inn. Now, you see, those Roman soldiers were asked to report to the sergeant as to why the heck they came in all messed up with mucky uniforms. And it was then, you see, as they reported to the sergeant, so they've got somebody to say it to, they've got an attitude being, you know, the sergeant has an attitude involved, and what's more, they know there's a higher officer waiting to get a record, the recorder, because that is going to go up through the ranks, and they better be ready. So that they're saying, well, I got this arm with so-and-so, and you see, they're filtering it through. I'm telling it to a sergeant who's going to tell it to another guy. So the attitude becomes very, very clear. Does that make sense? I don't dictate the attitude. The circumstances help them understand the hierarchy, and they shouldn't have got involved. They're supposed to be guarding these Jews and making sure roads are safe. And here they are fighting over a Samaritan, for goodness sake. Okay? Now, this will come clear as we start to get, you know, into more detail about it. Now then, we come to the next bit. I feel awful. I'm pushing all these things at you, and I'm pushing all these things at Ian. They're sort of platforms, all of which he will use to get himself going. Some he'll handle better than others, but he cannot manage without any of them. They each one affect the quality of the learning the children will get out of using drama. It is not a matter of saying, push the desk back, jump up, and let's all do the wind rushing round the earth. Now, I want to explain this to you, because this is to do with teaching yourself how to understand drama. When you watch a play, there are 6 things happening. One is, sometimes you hear sounds, right? And the opposite end of that would be silence. So all the time, signs are being given to you by all the sounds that you can imagine, and the silences, and sometimes that dominates. But it's on a continuum from the, I don't know how to draw it, it's the quietest nothing that is actually full of silence. Then you have the stillness. Actually, I'll put it this way, I'll put the movement here because this is the active. Then you have what people are doing, and when they are doing, still. Right? You must never get the notion that this is absence. This is filled with presence.
Yes,
And people know this when they watch a play, but they don't think about it. They think that is nothing. There isn't an empty space in the drama. It is filled with waiting to be filled. It's filled with waitingness. Right? I'm sure you're getting it because you're nodding. Are you up? You're getting it. Right. And then there's light. All the things we see, because the light is such. So light is always shaded. There's hardly any light that's completely without shadow. And then there's this filled with darkness. And we all know what it was like when we were little. I still do. I can terrify myself, you know, just the thought of it. Now, all these are operant in a drama. That's all there is to explain what's going on in life and in theatre. And in theatre, the signs are designed to be always exactly what you need, and nothing else that shouldn't be there is allowed to be there. That's why plays take so long and films take so long. In life, of course, there's all sorts there that you cut out. It's not relevant, it's not relevant, I don't want to know, I'm framed this way. In your classroom now, you are going to try to make these dominate, and the things we can't move out, like that plant and this, that and the other, we don't need to shift. But we concentrate on these signs that we're actually making. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, of course, they are framed within time. Now, this is the biggest shift in drama. If you can hear yourself teaching about how the wind works in the world, frequently you're talking in what I call, in my innocent way, over there talk. Suppose that, you know. And what we'd find if, it's all that over there talk. But in drama, it is now time. I can't talk over their talk. If I'm running a weather station, I'm actually at this moment, if I want to be very highly technical, as a 9-year-old might want to be, I might want to push 6 buttons and speak to China. Now! So I now speak to China with now time. We have news of a hurricane which has just appeared over Tonga, and we're tracking it for you, but we feel that it may well hit your shore at such and such a point. And now I'm telling you in China. Now, you don't see that kind of time, except in emergencies in school. Nearly always it's that antiseptic time of, you know, now you see it might hit. Look at where this tidal wave might come. If we trace it up the way we know about, you know, but suddenly there is a tidal wave, and it is a matter of urgency to tell you, because people have to be ready. If a Chinese person rings in to our weather station in now time, he says the dogs are all barking. They're running about. The hens are showing, you know, it's now. And that's why if you enter the drama, you make now. Where are the warriors returned from the hunt? It's going to look messy because the kids are going to look at one another and say, does he mean us? That's the kind of thing you might face. Even when you've made contracts, like, will you agree, shall we all agree that you'll have been hunting and we haven't got any food, and I will have the fire ready. Where is the buffalo? And you moved into now time. And that is the big difference. That is the shift in Barnes's communication system that you're going for. And that's why people are a bit scared of it, because it cuts out the usual teacher over there talk. Suppose that a tidal wave were moving up from New Zealand, up the coasts, and so on. You see what I mean? Right. Now then, you may feel that you can do this, that you have this, you can hear sounds and you can hear silences, because you're a natural reader, I would assume. Most teachers are good natural readers in a way. I mean, usually they've succeeded in the system.
Yes. I feel sometimes I can do that, but I don't feel very good at it, I have to say.
Well, I'm going to give you an exercise which I do believe really works. It'll obviously work better, like everything does, according to the time and energy you feel you can give to it. You see, one of the things you're going to have to do is think fast in images. You see, it's no good saying, where is the buffalo? If you yourself can't see one, you won't get the buffalo you see. You've no right to that. You get the buffalo they see. Your job is to help them see one. And if you can't see one, and look at the things they need to see one and use your judgment. You can't tell because you can't take people's heads off to see what's inside. It is this ability to range round this to see whether a moving buffalo or a still buffalo or a heavy buffalo and so on is what might help them not believe in a buffalo, but agree to believe in a buffalo, which is a totally different thing.
Yes.
Now, I had a student called Ali Cooper, and she taught me an awful lot. When the day she said, "I don't see pictures when I read, Dorothy. You seem to see pictures all the time. I teach English perfectly happily, but I'm sure I don't see what you see." Now, you see, the dramatic imagination is not passive. The dramatic imagination is full of action. It is always in praxis. It is in process of being. And it seems to me that, for a long time, I thought, well, how do you teach this to somebody? Well, Ali's question made me think about this. So I said to her, okay, find a piece of text that you think is very complicated in terms of what you'd have to see and what you'd have to hear and what you'd have to not see and not hear. And she came up with this. Now, you see, this is from Rosemary Sutcliffe's. I'm trying to think of the book it's from, but I'll think of it in a minute. Now, you see, she chose this bit where they're nailing the great arm of Grendel up on the wall. And I said, all right, read it through and only see what's going on. Then and write down what you see. Then read it through again and hear every sound you believe that is buried in that. And then read it again and record all the sound. We've done the sounds. Now hear all the times you would only hear silence. Yeah. And do it with every one. The result is, of course, 18,000 words based on this. Now, I'm going to suggest this as an exercise for you to do before we meet again. Now, it needs patience. You see, so in triumph, if you read so in triumph, what do you hear? They nailed. What do you hear? The huge, scaly arm. What do you hear? On one of the roof beams, they nailed on one of the roof beams. What do you hear? Above the high seat of Hrothgar. So you must patiently go through. Don't rush it. It is not, so they nailed the huge on. And then say, okay, I'll go back over that and I'll hear the silences. So in triumph, is there any silence there at all? They nailed, is there any silence? The huge, scaly arm. Now, we're not trying to interpret Rosemary Sutcliffe. We are deliberately destroying, in a way, Rosemary Sutcliffe to create 6 different views, all uniquely different. Now, you need this skill because for some children, you will breed the buffalo from the very silence in which 6 men stand ashamed. But if you breed it in sound, it's the great dragging in, the laying down, or the clashing of spears. It's what you hear. And if you sense all 6, you offer 6 views from which you yourself can choose according to the class. Standing in shame at no buffalo. may suit what they're more able to handle yet than rushing about. Does that make a bit of sense to you? So I'm setting you on with that. And so we move next. Ian is going to have to decide very clearly what learning areas in science he wants the drama to service. Now, he's mentioned one or two. We haven't yet got them down to concepts. What concept is it that makes them able to realise that wind is air in movement? And how might we best help them to realise it rather than tell them that this is what it is? The second thing is, and we've not discussed this yet, do you feel from what you know about yourself that you'd handle a few smaller groups better than handling the whole class? And you might be very confident in handling them all. You know, you've taught long enough to not be too worried. I mean, 24 is not a great many.
No, I think, I mean, I'm attracted more to the smaller groups, but then I have the problem of what happens to the rest.
Yes, yes.
You know, it might be easier to manage if I know what everybody's doing.
Yes, yes, if they're together, as you might say, yes, yes. Of course, if they're in smaller groups, then you have to find a way to be active all around them quickly. So you pay penances, you pay for what you get, you know. And, of course, being in smaller groups allows them to demonstrate to each other what they've understood. And the last thing we need to look at, then, is this. And then I think that's your homework for today, Ian. You may feel, oh, I didn't know when I came in, I didn't know I was landing myself into all this. And I'm kind of apologising, but if it is worth using drama in learning, then you better do it well, because there's enough mucking about. You'll know about straight transmission teaching because you'll have come up through the system probably, and you know that your predominant teacher role is to judge and assess the children. How are they getting on? And I don't mean being punitive. I mean, I've got to assess how they're learning. Their role is to present to you what they know, either in homework, written work, and so on. And the final draft is what you each give to each other. You give the best thing and they give their best. In the inquiry method, it's different. You try and understand what they're understanding. They share what they're learning, and together you both explore it. But I'm talking about this, that in the drama framework, you participate and contribute, they cooperate with that, and together you explain the world to one another. It is a laboratory, because by explaining the world to one another, you know what you know. And good luck. Good luck.